Madam Mayor, it's 6 o'clock. It's 6:01.
I said that so. Mean. I've got two of everything here. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call Tuesday, September 24th, Special City Commission meeting budget adoption to order and ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Mayor Pam Triola.
Here.
Vice Mayor Andy Amorosa.
Here.
Commissioner Scott Maxwell.
Here.
Commissioner Omari Hardy.
Here.
Commissioner Robinson is not here with us tonight.
If everyone please rise for the invocation and the pledge. Almighty God, you are our creator and our sustainer. You are our light and our fortress. You are our wisdom and our strength. We ask for your guiding hand to lead us through this meeting. May we approach our tasks with wisdom, and may we approach our members with respect. May our conduct create an environment of cooperation and kindness. Thank you for helping us accomplish our work this day. We ask these things in your powerful name.
Amen.
Commissioner Maxwell.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The presentation is going to be by the FAB board.
Okay.
And then
I'll
after that,
start.
you start. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
So we're going to start with our FAB board. The Fabulous Five. Look at you.
Oh yeah, the Fab Five, Michigan.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for allowing us to have this time together this evening. I'm Ben Ellis. I'm the chair of the Financial Advisory Board. I'm here with the other four Financial Advisory Board members. We are here to give you our 2020 budget recommendations. So first of all, I'd like to thank the staff and the commissioners for having us tonight. We appreciate the opportunity. We know that everyone has a busy schedule and there's a lot to fit in, and making time for all of the various advisory and citizen boards is much appreciated. We have limited time, so I'll try to move through this as quickly as possible. The Financial Advisory Board currently consists of myself, Sherry Schmidt, Jessica Shaw, Michael Calhoun, and Lindy Sato. The city staff, Bruce Miller, Director of Finance, and Corinne Elliott, Assistant Finance Director, have been a great help. You guys have some assets there that are very good for the city. Just a quick word about the Financial Advisory Board for people that maybe haven't been through one of these presentations before. The Financial Advisory Board was created by ordinance in 2010. It was first seated and active in the 2013 to 2014 budget season. It consists of 7 seats. We currently have 5 staffed. The 7 board members also sit on the Bond Oversight Committee, which was my introduction to these boards a couple of years ago. I would like to note that we have had substantial board turnover over the last 2 years, and continuity has been an issue for us, and we've been working towards trying to address that and putting some things together that will help future boards. The purpose of the FAB, it was added to the Code of Ordinances, Section 2-130, and it was established to serve in an advisory capacity of the City Commission and Manager. The board is mandated to promote transparency in the city budget process. The FAB is an opportunity for citizens to have input into the city's comprehensive plan, annual budget, and capital improvement programs. Of the things that the Financial Advisory Board is trying to do for itself to improve continuity and to make the process a little bit smoother for future boards after the last couple of sessions that we've had, is to break our calendar up into smaller, more manageable milestones so that we can be reporting back to the commission in between different various budget workshops. The budget calendar was pushed back a little bit this year. Everything got kind of jammed together at the end, and we feel like if we had broken it up into smaller tasks, we could have probably gotten more information to you guys earlier and faster, and that's a desirable thing. So it's something we'll be working for in the future. Another thing that we'll be looking to produce over the next couple of meetings, it doesn't have anything to do with this particular budget, but we want to have a cohesive statement of purpose for the Financial Advisory Board that talks about our relationship with the city, expands upon what the ordinance says, and is sort of a guiding document for future members so that we have something that as people come in, we can hand to them and says, this is what we do, this is why we do it, these are the things we try to do, and this is the importance of it to the city and how it can help all of us. And our new finance director was instrumental in giving us that item as something to put together and some templates to look at that other cities have done that have been very beneficial to them. And before we get into the actual recommendations, I want to talk about our discussions this year on the FAB board, and they focused more on process than policy. There's a lot of policy that has to be decided. You guys really need to decide the policy. We talked a lot about the budgeting process for the various funds and establishing metrics and procedures for the various funds and the people who administer them to go through on an annual basis that we think can help with all the planning. And as I said before, we have a director right now who has a lot of good habits he wants to bring to the city, and we're very impressed with them and would like to see them implemented. So we're going to start with the universal recommendations that aren't limited to any one fund. I'm going to go through these, and then after that, we'll just hit on the various funds that have fund-specific recommendations. The first is we recommend updating the city's fund balance policy across all funds to establish a specific policy for each enterprise and general fund. What we believe the funds should be aiming to do is to get off of emergency operations, building reserves, having the city look at what services cost and charging what services cost when those services are rendered. Getting away from pay-go for capital improvement projects. CIP projects can be funded with bond money or loans right now. It's very inexpensive to borrow money. That can be used to take care of large capital expenditures so we have cash left over for emergencies and smooth out the budget year over year. We wanted to emphasize that planning is a long-term issue. I know that we do the budget year by year, but we would like to be looking down the road at several years at a time, not the individual policies, but just having a cohesive plan for how we go forward and smooth out the ramps up and down as the economy comes and goes or emergencies come and go. One of the things that we'd like to see is a written guideline of best practice policies and financial principles. This is something that we spoke with Bruce about that I know that he has on his docket to get into at some point in time, although I believe you've kept him very busy over the last fiscal year. But we talked about having updated and written guidelines and principles and practices. There's nothing new about accounting and our cities encountering problems that other cities have had, and there's guiding documents and experience that we can draw upon to smooth out our own issues internally. We would recommend changing the enterprise fund rate increase policy to allow administrative rate changes up to, we say 5%, that's a little bit arbitrary, but to a certain percent based on the need identified by an analysis of the respective fund. What this would do is it would take small rate changes out of the commission's hands to vote on. They'd be looked at by a third party, and administratively small rate changes would just be implemented by staff without having it come up for debate every year if it can be justified to go towards the cost of the fund and services. We recommend updating the city's debt policy for adjusting all utility fund rates to comply with bond covenants. Once again, it's trying to get all of the various funds to be self-sufficient. We would recommend the city comprehensive plan include a new utility customer target growth rate at 2 to 5% yearly for the next 10 years. That would reflect what Stantec's models would be. And as you know, there are several sections of the city that are ripe for improvement or development, not just downtown, but the South Federal, Dixie corridor, the Park of Commerce. It's going to be important to continue to grow the city and use the resources that are here and have businesses come in long term. And we stand behind the city in moving forward in these areas. We recommend the city to continue to evaluate methods to control annual health insurance premium increases. We are aware that the year-over-year cost increase to the city's health insurance plan for the employees was 15% this year. That's probably not something that's going to happen every year, but health insurance costs are a major concern and the value of the product that you get is there's a wide array of things that can be beneficial or detrimental to keeping employees around, and having this as a thing that is offered to them is important. Continue with the Financial Advisory Board Universal Recommendations. We recommend an evaluation of the sheriff's annual contract to ensure best value. The board didn't go through the sheriff's contract. It's a very complex mechanism, but safety between the sheriff and fire represents fully 50% of the city's budget. It's a big number. I know it's very complicated and intricate, but it's something that we just want to emphasize that best value is going to be important there. We recommend the city expand risk assessment to an organizational perspective. This is essentially getting away from looking at risk assessment as just the cost of insurance, but business practices, how we go about things, what the city does and doesn't do that could cause risk to the city in other areas or manners. We recommend the city reassess capital funding policies. This goes back to rainy days and dealing with unexpected expenses. Capital improvement projects we recommend be funded via bonds or lending, and we get away from pay-go, where we have some cash on hand and we pay for big ticket items out of our cash reserves. For the financial health of the city, we like to see larger cash reserves, and then those things could be used when we have an emergency where we have an unexpected power outage and we have to bring in extra PBSO, or we have a hurricane, we need extra trash pickups, all those things you can't plan for, but we know that they happen. We recommend the city evaluate all city-owned assets and identify any management potential and growth opportunities. In everything that the city does, a question that we think is reasonable to ask is this our core business? And if it isn't a core business and it can be turned over to somebody whose core business it is as a service provider to the city, we would like to see that happen. Specific examples would be management of the beach casino properties. That property is ripe to have a management company come in and just run it, take care of the leases, take care of the CAM. But that goes across all the city-owned assets and properties. The FAB General Fund recommendations. We agree with the city moving forward with reducing the electric utility contribution by $300,000 per year, working toward achieving a rate of 6 to 8% of the utility funds going to the general fund.
Sorry.
All right.
Please continue.
The 6 to 8% represents what a utility would pay as a franchise fee to operate in the city. We think that it's reasonable to get the utilities contribution to the general fund down to what a franchise fee would pay. It will help the electrical utility be more solvent, keep more cash on hand, and be able to pay for their own upgrades and infrastructure. And the general fund has been too dependent on the electric utility. We recommend the city review rates and fees to better cover the cost of services. We recommend the city impose punitive fines related to code compliance and criminal activity. Now, a word on this one. This is a work in progress. We are aware that there are a lot of implications, both civil and legal. But what we were talking about, and we're going to continue to mull this over, is when somebody commits crimes or does something that harms the city, we should have this. We would like to see if the city could hold them financially responsible for that harm or damage. We recommend establishing the CRA's payments to cover its administrative costs. We couldn't get the specifics, but we are aware that in the past, the CRA reimbursed the city for administrative costs for computer, IT support, finance. When the CRA was, the budget was having shortfalls, those were suspended and the city absorbed it. But the CRA at this point in time seems to be self-sufficient. And once again, the city should charge for the services it renders. So we believe that the CRA, if they're taking services, should either have to reimburse the city or source them themselves. We recommend the city evaluate operations and revenue sources to identify needed future adjustments which aim toward building fund balances. And this is, once again, going back to making all the various funds self-sufficient. We want to identify activities that cost more than they generate. And obviously the city provide services to the citizens, but there's a formal methodology for ranking services and determining if we're getting good value or spending the dollars that we have in the best way possible, and makes it less subjective and more objective. And we believe that it would be beneficial to the city to go through all of the services it provides, identify the things that don't have a return on investment, and then determining which of those are most important so that the city can afford the services that it promises to the citizens. Moving on to the electric fund. We agree with the city implementing a policy to maintain rates within the top 25% of statewide utility unless an increase is needed to repay bond debt. That reads a little backwards. Right now, when we say rank within the top 25%, we don't mean the most expensive, we mean the most cost effective. Getting rate parity with FP&L was a big deal for the city. It was a hugely popular thing. I know that I appreciated it. And we support staying in that parameter. And once again, all funds should be self-sufficient. You can't give away electricity, but one of the things that is happening is that the overly expensive electric in the past has been used to balance out the general fund, and we want to try to step away from that as best we can. Let the electric fund stand on its own merit. We agree with the city moving forward with recapitalization of debt and generating funding for tie line and hardening of the system via bond or borrowing. We recommend adjusting the budget to restructure the beach fund debt. The beach fund's going to come up in the other funds a couple of times because the beach fund owes several other funds money, and they either have not been paying it back or been paying it back very slow. We need to get that into an annual budget where the individual funds are being paid back for the beach funds. The beach fund can stand on its own. Beach fund recommendations. Going right back to the last item, recommend restructuring the loan from multiple funds to minimize impact on the beach fund. Extending the life of the loan out a little bit gives the beach fund a little bit more cash every year. The beach facility is only 8 years old, but the environment that it's on the beach, a corrosive area, is very damaging. And I expect, as an engineer, you're going to start seeing increased costs for replacement, upgrade, painting, HVAC equipment. And if the beach fund is on a shoestring budget now and it didn't really have a lot of those things, we have to look forward to getting it back to a point where it can pump out substantial amounts of money on an annual basis to make these things stay up to par so that we don't have a situation where we have decrepit buildings. We recommend collecting more demographic data on beach attendees to establish target market information. This is something we've had a lot of discussion with the city, and we don't know what the vendor can do, but if we can identify which license tags are from our city and not from our city, we can determine the percentage of the revenue that's from out of town. And our feeling is that if we identify that a very large percentage of people are from out of town, then we should test the market rates for parking until failure. And this steps into the market parking rate evaluation. Right now, we haven't seen a lot of market resistance to our parking rates. We feel like they can be pushed a lot farther. One of the things that we thought might be a good use of staff time would be to explore doing peak rate, just like the Turnpike does. When it's very, very busy, as the number of spots drops, the parking price per hour goes up, and when the beach is empty, the parking price is at a minimum. We recommend the city consider highest and best use for available space at the beach. I know we talk about this a lot. Some city staff stays out there and it occupies the office areas. This is our best property. It's out on the beach. A lot of the city staff that's out there needs to be there. The grounds crews and maintenance, the parking, and the lifeguards obviously need to be on the beach. That's where they need to be. But administrative staff, we recommend trying to move them into an area that's not at the beach and trying to free up that prime real estate for leasing. The water, sewer, refuse, and storm I put all together, and we just recommend going with the recommended budget increases for each, even the 15%. We spent a lot of time last year in the last budget cycle on the water, sewer, refuse funds, and we adjusted a lot of those to bring them into line with what other municipalities were charging. I want to say those are our most healthy funds, although I was cautioned not to oversell that because all of our funds need attention and need to have better cash reserves. But These funds are in better shape than some of the others. We think that the staff that runs our utilities, Brian Shields and all those other guys, are doing a very good job. I've always been impressed when I speak to them when they come in and go over with the bond committee and with the FAB what's happening, and just to keep on trucking with this particular item. Okay, that's the end of our presentation. Thank you all for your time. If you have any questions, I'll try my best to answer them. I will warn you that this is only my second cycle of budget.
Commissioner Hardy?
Sure. You talked about a target growth rate in the comprehensive plan. In the comprehensive plan, in the data section, which is like the second part of it, there's a projected growth rate for the city. Are you saying that in addition to simply projecting the growth rate for the city, we should adopt a goal for growth
Correct.
and adjust our land use and comprehensive planning decisions to reflect that goal?
Correct. So what we would like to see is development in these areas that are deteriorating or sitting empty to be encouraged. And the way that the city can do that is by the land development code.
Thank you. I appreciate that. The other thing you said that you want to evaluate all city-owned assets and properties, aside from the beach, which you mentioned, are there other city-owned assets that you believe that we should take a look at to see if we are treating them as assets? Assets are things that eventually turn into cash, right? That's what an asset is. Are there other properties, assets that you?
The beach is the primary concern because it's such an obvious low-hanging fruit, but the city owns properties all over the jurisdiction of the 33460. The former Leisure Services building, properties downtown, the annex, the main city hall, all of these properties would be something that we'd like to see under that umbrella. The beach is the most forward one of them, though.
Okay. CRA administrative costs, good catch. Two other observations or questions. For the electric fund, you said we agree with the city implementing a policy to maintain rates within the top 25 percentile or the bottom 25 percentile, however you construe it. And there's a caveat there, unless an increase is needed to repay bond debt. Could you define that clause there? What would what would constitute a need for you?
So right now the utility is functional, and with the current budget projections, we can get it into a situation where it can hold cash reserves. If there was a situation with a major storm event, Doran would be a good example. Thank God it didn't hit us. It could have caused massive infrastructure damage. In that case, the city would have to borrow a lot of money to fix a lot of things and pull in help from all over the country. And in that case, I would say that the ultimate kilowatt price for the next couple of years is tertiary to the need of keeping the utility functional.
Sure. Okay. And the last thing, the parking rate evaluation. It's something that I've said here before. I feel like it's a bad idea for elected bodies to set parking rates. I think it's a good idea for elected bodies to set parking standards and allow the rates to set themselves. And I think one way that we can do that is through a demand-based pricing system, which is exactly what you described. When demand is very high and supply is very low, prices should be reflected so that the equilibrium, so that, the market clears, basically. And that's not really what happens at the beach. So you can set a parking standard that says at any given time, we would like to make sure that there's at least, 2 or 3 parking stalls between each median available, and there's a price at which the market will give you that. Instead, we sit up here and say, okay, here's what the price is going to be for the year. Whatever the market is telling us at the beach, we're not, that doesn't matter. We just think this is fair. We just think this is right. I think we should probably hire someone or have staff do it internally to figure out, how can we work with our vendor so that the beach prices its own parking based on the demand and the supply for parking at the beach. And I think that that's ultimately the fairest thing that we can do. So I appreciate the recommendation. Thank you guys for the hard work, all of you. It's not an easy job. You guys meet on a regular basis on a Monday night. Who wants to do that on a monthly basis on a Monday night? But we thank you for doing it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
I want to start by thanking all of you for your hard work and the direction that you're taking us. I do want to plant a couple seeds because I know some of you are new. And so I totally agree with doing something better in that space up at the beach. However, we do have an award-winning ballroom, and staff quite often meets brides, things up there. I do think they need to be closer. It was very upsetting to me when we inherited the beach project that there weren't even a room to keep tables and chairs. So I would love to, talk to you a little bit more about your thoughts and ideas on what can be done. We've had those conversations up here that we definitely need to do something more with that room, but we also struggle for funding to actually replace and keep staff close, and or something as simple as tables and chairs. Trying to remember everything because you ran it out. The CRA, I'm the liaison to the CRA, and I totally agree with you that they should be paying the hard costs. However, quite often CRA is picking up work that the city cannot do with writing grants and doing other things. So again, I encourage you to move forward with your thought pattern, but also take into consideration and maybe having those conversations with the CRA director on what the CRA does for the city. That is a compensation back and forth, because if you do, or we look at going down and charging them those hard costs, they do have the ability to charge us the hard costs. And they do a lot of work for us that you don't necessarily see. That is a hard cost that may be more than their IT funds. So I'd like to, look at that and see what the pros and cons. There was one more, but I can't think of it right now because I got lost. But I look forward to working with you. Thank you.
What I would say about the CRA costs is I'm aware that it can go both ways. We've been speaking with the city, and obviously if the CRA is doing work for the city and the city is going to charge the CRA, there should be a balancing act.
Absolutely. And I think that's what's happening now. We're just not seeing it, or maybe you weren't privy to it. So let's look into it and have that conversation, because there is a lot of things by having a CRA. You can do a lot of things that, work in the benefit of the taxpayers and the citizens. So, let's look at it.
That's fantastic. I think that our interest would be just memorializing all of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And clarity and, let's just make sure that, again, I'm one for making sure our hard costs are paid for. So absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Ben, and thank you to your board for the very thoughtful consideration that you all put into this presentation. Couple of things. You spoke early in your presentation about, and I can't quote you, but you were going to expand.
I can go back to the slide if you'd like.
Well, yeah, actually, what your comment is not on the slide.
Okay.
You were talking about, basically what you're saying is you're looking to identify maybe what your mission statement is, but even though you didn't say mission statement.
Okay.
Is that a fair?
I think we're calling it a statement of purpose.
Statement of purpose. Okay. And I just wanted to, thank you, obviously, for maybe trying to take this to another level. But, I know, Ben, you've been around a while, and some of the other folks in your board have been with us in the city for a long time. From time to time, we run into situations where our different volunteer boards, sometimes they go beyond the scope of their, I know, it's hard to imagine, of what the purpose of the ordinance was. I would just ask that as you start crafting your statement of purpose, that before you actually implement it, that you bring it back and let's make sure we get it codified or whatever we have to do as far as the ordinance is concerned, so there's no misunderstandings about what your purview is. And does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. We have been working with staff while we're putting this together, and fundamentally, what we want this to do is we can't obviously change what the code says the FAB does. We're just trying to expound on how we go about accomplishing that mission.
Fine. That's great. And I appreciate you taking that extra step or that extra effort. And did you want to comment before I go to my next 14 items?
No, you go ahead. You're on a roll.
And the other thing you also mentioned in passing, actually was right after you spoke about the CRA's situation with the payments to cover costs or whatever. You used the term formal methodology to rank city services. Now,
Yes.
is there in fact a formal methodology that that we need to be aware of, that we can start taking all the city services and putting it into that grinder or whatever and seeing, how things rank?
I
Or did
would venture to
misunderstand
say
what
there's
you're-
probably more than one. There are probably several. That was something that our director of finance brought to our attention, and I think that if you were looking for something that was formal, he would be a great resource for you. It was
Yeah,
something we're going to be looking into in the next session a little bit more.
Well, I picked up on that only because, sometimes we get into debates over, what's a priority and, what's more important, to the residents of the city. And I'm just wondering if, the finance director, if you've got some models or whatever that we need to start thinking about in the future, I say bring it on, because we certainly want to be able to, what's the word I'm looking for? Catalog, if you will, the services that we provide and find out, just exactly how important and valuable they are to the community, and how, whether there's a service out there that we need to expand on, or maybe there's a service out there that maybe we could get away with not providing and save ourselves a couple of bucks. So is that what the spirit of your comment was?
Yes, and I don't think that I've been I've held back much in my public views that when choosing between a confectioner and a dietitian, the public would choose the confectioner every
Absolutely.
time. But I really believe that the commission needs to be the dietitian here.
Thank you.
Wow.
Uh,
Good analogy.
I love that. I love that. Anyway, again, thank you, Ben, and thank you to your board. You guys, I know you put a lot of hard work into this, and we really appreciate your presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, I remember the third. So I'm not a big person on outsourcing. However, I know that there's certain times you have to outsource. And you had mentioned beach management. I'd like to, have a little bit more conversation about that, but also where the funding source would come from that. Because again, you had mentioned and alluded to the beach fund, is struggling and we're working on. So what does a funding mechanism and what that might look like for that particular item?
And that would be part of the due diligence. A property management company obviously is going to charge a certain amount of money to render services, and it's going to depend on the level of effort they have to put into it. Do they need to have full-time on-site staff? Do they just have an off-site manager? Do they have a manager there 20 hours a week? These are all things that would be fantastic to talk to some property managers about, and I know we have several in the city who we can get together.
And that goes back to Vice Mayor Pro Tem Maxwell's conversation about eliminating some things we may be able to do better and or don't need, what that property management might do, because we have a landscape at the beach, we have other pieces that are sourced out. If you could bring it all under one umbrella, what does that look like, and can we still do the same job? Absolutely.
And I think the key items that we were focusing on was a property manager would be able to assist the city when the leases come back up, to write leases that are not very one-sided or onerous on the city. That was one of the things that really got us going down this path.
Yeah, and we've talked about that quite often. We inherited some of that stuff that we're living with now. So absolutely.
I just want to thank you guys. It was a wonderful presentation. I appreciate you being here. A lot of good insight. Some things we're doing, some things we're not, that we need to look further into. There are some businesses that we're in that cities normally aren't in. So I think that we should be looking at those first and foremost. And the discussion of, we go to the League of Cities, we go to the U.S. Conference of Mayors, we go places, some of the smaller cities that have better tax bases or whatnot, or have better finances, simply because they have public-private partnerships, they have other types of things that allow the city to generate revenue and have a constant source of income, as opposed to all the operational costs. So those are things outside the box that it's not outside the box. Other cities have been doing it for decades, and we could look at those things. And I'm anxious for you to look at some of those things. I had one other thing and I just lost it. I did what you did, but I'm very grateful to give you an idea. 2010, when the Finance Advisory Board was started, we weren't here then. But it was very important because we started I remember myself, I can only speak for myself, but started the budget process and said, well, why isn't the Finance Advisory Board meeting?
They were sleeping at the time.
Yeah, and
They didn't have a quorum.
They didn't have a quorum, and nor did they have the support of staff who didn't want to be questioned during the budget process. And that was the start of a very deep conversation that, and I got irate over it and said this finance advisory board will be reestablished. I believe you were my first appointee to the finance advisory. I think you were. Yeah, exactly. So when it got up and rolling, it took a few years to get it going. So you have a purpose, and I'm glad you're there. So I'm looking forward to counting on you more and more each budget cycle. And I think that a lot of the directives that you've given, Mr. Finance Director, and Corinne, Assistant Finance Person, I think are really good. Let's set that policy and procedure into place so we can do it and have more frequent interactions with them through the budget process, so that it will be more timely to us having our debate rather than coming in at the end when we're approving budgets, but to actually have them there while we're talking about those necessary items, and we have our debate that sometimes goes on up here on the dais over those different items. But I'm looking forward to that. It is a dream realized for me, and I'm glad you're here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just,
City Manager?
if you don't mind, Madam Mayor, I wanted to express my appreciation, Chairman Ellis and the board members, for this work product. You're sticking to it and staying with it and working with staff. I know, as the mayor said, during the period of time when the board really started to be recognized in about 2013, on the staff side of the equation, it hasn't been easy. And I know that I have cycled through, I forget how many finance directors, and also building a change in the culture of the city organization, and how the staff and the management team values performance and measures and professionalism. And I have to say, though, with Bruce coming on board, and also with Corinne's experience in the organization, coupled with y'all, these items that you've identified, they align really well with a lot of the areas we do need to be really focusing on and looking at. And I just wanted to say we value that, and we're very appreciative of your work. Thank you.
Sure. I did fail to mention earlier when I was talking about how much staff was helpful. I forgot to mention Jamie. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
That was all I had.
Yay, Jamie.
Anything else?
No, thank you, Ben. Appreciate it.
Jamie always gets a shout out. That's the most popular man in Lake Worth Beach.
Okay,
Okay, before we go to the public
you can have it.
public hearings, is this the time?
It is, Madam Mayor.
The purpose of the City of Lake Worth Beach special meeting is to convene the second mandatory public hearing on the fiscal year 2019-20 proposed millage rate and tentative budget as required by sections 166.241 and 200.065 Florida statutes. On July 16, 2019, the City Commission set a proposed millage rate of 5.4945 mils, which was advertised in the Truth and Millage, the trim notices sent to all property owners. The first public mandatory hearing was held on September 12, 2019, where the City Commission adopted the proposed millage rate of 5.4945 mils for fiscal year 1920, and the City Commission adopted a tentative budget for fiscal year 1920. On September 22nd, 2019, the second public hearing was advertised in the Palm Beach Post announcing a proposed tax increase over the rolled back rate, and the budget appropriation summary was also advertised on that day. We have received the proof of publication. You have it?
I don't have it with
Okay.
me.
But we have it.
Corinne has it.
You have it.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Usually someone like holds it up.
I saw it in the paper.
The City of Lake Worth Beach's proposed millage rate is 5.4945, which is an 8.27 increase over the rolled back rate. Increase is necessary to fund the tentative budget for 2019-20. The specific purposes for which ad valorem tax revenues are being increased are to cover city operating costs. This is a public hearing, and the general public may speak and ask questions regarding the proposed millage rate for fiscal year 2019-20.
You open the meeting, ask for public hearing.
I've already opened the meeting.
You open the public hearing.
Open the public hearing. Okay. So I'm opening the public hearing. IW open.
Ask if
And
any
now,
public
would
hearing.
any public like to speak on this? Seeing there are none, I will close the public hearing
And call for a motion.
and I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
This is for the millage rate?
This is for
Military.
I'll
the
second.
military. Second. Any public comment?
No, Madam Mayor.
Seeing there are none, all those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The next item is the public hearing to adopt the final budget for 2019-20. This is a public hearing, and the general public may speak and ask questions regarding the proposed final budget for 19-20. I shall open the public hearing. Are there any public comment cards?
No.
Would anyone like to speak? Seeing there are none, I will close the public hearing. I need like
I
a...
don't write the rules. I just read.
Oh, that, I'm sorry.
I know maybe it's not part of this agenda here, but
No, it's not.
I know.
I know.
It's been closed for how long?
So we don't go back and forth. I'm sorry. No speak. No, I'm not allowed to take calls directly from the dais. Thank you, though. But we can talk to you afterwards. Okay. I'll entertain a motion for the budget.
So moved.
Do I have a second? A second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say
I'm-
aye.
oh, can
I'm
we
sorry?
have some discussion, please?
Okay, well, there could have been discussion beginning. Okay, discussion?
Okay. My understanding is that we can't discuss until you get a motion or a second.
Well, that's changed a couple times, but go ahead.
Okay. I was a no last time. I'm a no this time. If what we're voting on is the budget as is. There are consequences. As far as I know, Commissioner Maxwell voted no the last time, so it would appear that we're at a deadlock or a tie.
Excuse me, Commissioner Maxwell has not voted yet?
Well, I'm a no right now.
Okay.
So I'm a no right now.
Commissioner Maxwell?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. As I mentioned at the first bite at this apple, the first vote, I voted no because of my concerns over how the direction I thought the commission was taking with respect to capital expenditures going forward. My understanding is that we've had as we know, every year our expenses go up. It was just mentioned in our presentation, about the police and the fire being a big part of our budget. Those costs go up every year. The cost of health insurance goes up every year. The cost of our employees' salaries and their benefits goes up every year. And while we are showing really nice increases in our property values, which is what we strive for, unfortunately, those property values are rising not quite fast enough. We're not generating enough income to cover these increases. So the staff has had to do some very, very difficult work this year in that they've had to remove all the potential capital spending in the general fund budget. And we've also unfortunately had to cut back on our staff. However, even in view of all that that's been done to balance our budget, which is required by law, staff has yet to bring forth, and they will be very soon, their capital needs that, as we all know, we're going to have a conversation or an opportunity to take a look at going forward. And as you know, I'm a very outspoken opponent, if you will, of rebuilding a swimming pool on the beach. And the last meeting that we had at least one, if not two, of our members of our body flat out say that they wanted a commitment of $10 million for that pool and or whatever up there. And they wanted that commitment before staff had an opportunity to bring their capital needs to the commission for our consideration. So I cannot, with good conscience, vote for this budget because what I am effectively doing is a tacit endorsement of what I project is going to be happening in the future with the capital. I can't do that. This beach project, this pool issue, is a nice to do. It's great if we can do it. The capital needs that staff, I suspect, is going to bring forward are must-dos. And as Ben just said a few minutes ago, I'll try to, if you ask them if you want a confectioneer or a diet, they're going to go for the confectioneer. We can't do that. We're not in a position to do that. I am not going to support anything that puts us closer to spending millions of dollars on that beachfront property when we've already spent millions of dollars up there in the past that didn't work out really, really well for us. And we haven't fixed those issues yet. So unless we can get this commission to back off of the, dumping I'm talking mega millions of dollars in that beachfront and, repositioning our thought processes and focusing strictly on the needs that we have in this city, I'm not willing to vote in favor of this evening.
Madam Mayor.
First, I thought we moved the capital projects out and we're not talking about the penny sales tax. So with that being said, right now we're talking about our operating budget that's before us right now. Those conversations will go on. As for the reference by the Vice Mayor Pro Tem as to the last meeting, where 2 of the 3 people that were supportive of a pool, including myself, will remember that I supported it with no dollar amount attached to it because we still have to hear in reference to the capital fund, capital projects, and that. This was taken out. The capital projects and the penny sales tax conversation will happen at another time. This is a budget, which is the bare bones budget of the basic expenditures the city needs to start and fund right now to stay in business. We're required by law, as you said, and I don't know why. I mean, we can talk about those things the next time around, but they're not included in here. It was intentionally done so that we could have those discussions in public and talk about them. I don't know why approving this budget would be so contentious, and I don't understand it at all.
Commissioner Hardy.
Although I'm on the other side of the capital spending argument as Commissioner Maxwell, I agree with him when he says that, your operating budget and your capital budget, there are implications that go both ways, and I see them as connected. The other thing I would like to note is that it's highly unusual for staff to present not only this body, but for any municipal staff to present their commission or their council or whatever it is that governs the municipality with an operating budget only to approve, and then later on to submit them with a capital spending budget. Those 2 things, again, typically go hand in hand. I found that to be highly unusual. And so I guess I'm with Commissioner Maxwell on this. I'm a no on this budget. So those are my comments
Commissioner
on
Maxwell.
this motion.
Yes, yes, thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Madam Mayor, if I could try to paint an example of what we're talking about and why I'm voting no. Let's say, for example, there was an item that maybe normally would have been in the budget for a capital expenditure. Let's call it, I'll just call it Capital Project A. And it's a need to do.
Is that too late?
But we had to take it out to balance the budget. So, Capital Project A gets moved over into a list of other capital needs. Okay? And we approve this budget. And then we have this conversation in the future about capital expenditures. What happens if capital item A does not get funded because of the beach? There is no guarantee. There's no guarantee that the absolute needs of this city, capital needs of this city, are going to get funded first. And the beach, any monies that might be left over, potentially could be discussed for the beach. There is no guarantee. And frankly, the last meeting, I did not walk away from that meeting thinking that there was no dollar value on the table. I walked away from that meeting believing that it was still a 9.5. No, I'm sorry, I'll disagree with you, Madam Mayor. I walked away, the agreement that I thought because we couldn't get agreement on the no dollar amount. So there's just too much at risk here. I cannot possibly take the chance of having the majority or a majority of this commission actually revert back to the bad old days of how this city was governed. And, I can't do it. I absolutely cannot do that. I can't believe that we have 5 reasonably intelligent individuals up here who are looking beyond the absolute needs of our city. I'm talking roads, I'm talking public safety building, I'm talking about all the other issues that we have that are going to go in the capital needs list. And we're going to put the beach first as a priority, because that's exactly what we've done. We've spent hours and hours and hours debating this beach issue. Okay. And I'm sorry. I don't feel comfortable with this at all. I've seen how things happen around here, and I am not going to get bamboozled into thinking that we're going to take care of the absolute needs of our absolute capital needs first, and then anything that may be left over, be it regular capital funds that we have in reserves or the penny sales tax, then we'll talk about the beach second. I have no comfort level that that's going to happen. I think it's going to be all about the beach first. We're going to try to finagle a number first, and then whatever might be left over, the crumbs that might be left over, we'll deal with as far as our city needs are concerned. I'm sorry. And when I have two commissioners flat out say they want this done and committed to before we bring the city's capital needs forward, that scares the hell out of me.
Madam Mayor?
I didn't approve it with a fund. I wouldn't have voted for it if it had a dollar amount attached to it. That's pretty much what I said at the last meeting. And at the very end, that's exactly what happened. There was no dollar amount attached to it. The motion was made without a dollar amount attached to it. The commissioner who's absent this evening, he wanted a dollar amount attached to it and teetered back and forth on it. But in the end, he approved it without a dollar amount attached to it so that we could have the discussion about our capital funds. Also, the discussion earlier was using, bonds for capital funding projects. Was that recommended by the Finance Advisory Board for capital projects? I mean, there's a whole list of conversations, and these conversations need to continue. But I think, honestly, to let staff, to do what we're supposed to do by law and let staff get to work and start the new budget year, is it irregular? Yes. Are most of our meetings irregular? Yes. So I just think it's our job to do this, and we can have those other conversations. But I don't like things being put into my mouth that it was approved that way. All you have to do is watch the meeting and see there was no dollar amount approved to it, and those conversations will continue, regardless of how you feel about them.
City Manager?
Vice Mayor. Vice Mayor Pro Tem, if I understand you correctly, you have a concern about the issue regarding potentially funds that would be used up at the beach, the pool, and the sales tax pot. The way the budget process has currently been bifurcated with a separation of the capital over into the month of October, and just so everybody's clear, we really were kind of forced into separating this out because we were working with the financial advisor and bond advisors and Stantec and modeling with the utilities because we were looking to do a major borrowing process. Because of the way the schedule worked with the finance director and the department, we felt it was a better, more focused way to have a scrutiny and go through that process. So in October, on October the 10th, will be a workshop that will focus on those capital needs. And at that point, or in subsequent workshops that we could even hold additionally in October, you would have a chance to really have that deep conversation about your concerns related specifically to those capital projects and those funding sources, if that gives you any level of comfort.
Real quick before I move on, I just wanted to plant a seed. If the finance board members could be at that meeting on the 10th, I think it would really enlighten us on your thoughts on some of those capital. I know some of you have been here through some of our meetings, but if you can make it a point to be there on the 10th, just because we'd love for you to circle back around and give us your thoughts. Commissioner Maxwell?
Well, Commissioner Hardy was first.
No, you were.
Okay.
Thank you.
First of all, Madam Mayor, I apologize if you think I was putting words in your mouth. I wasn't putting words in your mouth. Actually, I said I came away from that meeting believing that we had voted, or the commission had voted on, sticking to the $9.5 million. So it had nothing to do with putting words in your mouth. I'm keenly aware that we could go out and borrow money possibly, or we could go out and bond possibly for our capital needs. That's a very common practice in municipal government. It's not something we've done a lot here in the city of Lake Worth, that's for sure. But when you have, as I think I've heard people say, a windfall, if you will, the penny sales tax, which is really what it was designed to do, You know, why would you go out and borrow when you've already taxed the community and the county to get the revenue to begin with? Why would you do that? Now, if you want to fix all of our needed capital projects first, and if you're that hell-bent on doing something with the beach and you want to drop $10 million, then put it on the ballot and let the folks vote for a referendum for to tax themselves to redo the beach. Now, I think that's fair. You know, I've heard people say, oh, the people want the beach, the people want the pool, no, the people don't want the beach, okay? I've been at this for 20 years talking about this beach. Trust me. In fact, the FAB board tonight even talked about doing a more detailed demographic study. It's been proven time and time and time again that the vast majority of the people that use that beach don't even live in this city. They don't even live in this city. Why would we take $10 million at the expense of no new roads, or at the expense of a public services building, or in the other litany of capital needs we have for the city, okay, and then turn around and tax our residents? This just doesn't make any sense. That makes no common sense whatsoever. And I'm sticking to my guns. I'm going to fight this beach project with everything I have, just like I have for the last 20 years. That beach has caused more damage to this city. The politics of that beach has caused more damage to this city in the last 20 that I've been involved than any other issue that we have. And I, for the life of me, can understand that. This, as I've heard it said before, a target-rich environment of so many positive things that we can do in this community to improve the quality of life of our residents. Yet we're going to put all that on the back burner and focus once again on a boondoggle on the beach. I'm sorry. I'm just absolutely sorry, but we have to. Now, if you want to vote tonight to require that we fund the city's capital projects first and then have a conversation about the beach with any money that's left over, I'm willing to have that conversation. But short of that,
Mr. Hardy?
I objected to something that the city manager said because it did not appear to me to add up. If the sole purpose of bifurcating the operating budget discussion from the capital spending budget discussion was to shine a light on the capital spending discussion, that could have been done without the capital spending part coming after the October 1st start of the fiscal year. And if that was the plan, seemingly one would have planned to adopt that portion of the budget before the fiscal year begins. I'm not sure why we don't have a capital spending budget in front of us, but that doesn't strike me as true. I'm going to reiterate my no, and I'm ready to vote
Madam Mayor?
on the motion.
I would just say that in all the discussions that we've had, I've focused on the city's needs. There are many needs that the city has, and that money, that sales tax money, can affect 4, 5, 6 different projects and impact our budget, capital projects, whatever. We haven't had. Everyone keeps trying to draw a line in the sand. Yes or no? I mean, that's the BS that got us in trouble a long time ago. We don't draw lines in the sand anymore. It's not all or nothing. It's called compromise. And we could fund a lot of good projects in the city with the sales tax money. And we have to be willing to have that kind of conversation. I've been trying to have it the whole time, but everyone keeps wanting to sensationalize it and make it you're either a for or against. You know what? I didn't get involved and run for office the first time to sit there and have two sides. It's mirroring what's going on in the political world and in the federal government and everything else. We don't have the leisure of this. We see our constituents every day in the supermarket, in our driveways, at the mailbox, at the this or the that. We're accountable to them. And I get that. And we can have these conversations. But when you sensationalize it and you draw a line in the sand, it doesn't do any good for us. And in fact, it makes us look weaker to our constituents because we can't make positive decisions that can help numerous people on multiple fronts. It's either one or the other. It's not the way it is. And I'm disappointed that it's been laid out that way. We have a chance to do some really good things here and some positive things. And we should have that conversation when we talk about the penny sales tax, when we talk about capital projects. We can do that. Let's do our job, folks. We got a budget, an operating budget to approve for our staff. Let's do that, and let's continue our discussions. But really, fighting or debating over this and taking a stand and standing on a line and giving I mean, it's just, it makes us look silly.
Commissioner Maxwell, and I'll finish with the city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Madam Mayor, I want to remind you that the comment was very clearly made in the last meeting by one of the members of this board, and basically echoed by a second one, that they wanted a commitment for $10 million on that beach before the city had a chance to present their capital projects. That, to me, is a line in the sand. That, to me, speaks of really irresponsible governance and being a good steward of the taxpayers' money. And I've had one member of this board who's always said before, at least said it once before, that you need to bring everything on the table. Everything needs to be on the table. Yet that same person doesn't want everything on the table now. They're willing to go ahead and commit to $10 million before we see the other capital projects. That was the line that drawn in the sand. And there's no sensationalization going on here by my part. You know, I have a lot more experience dealing with this beach debacle than anyone sitting up here. Okay? And I wish things were different. I wish that we were so financially solvent and we had money coming out of our ears that we had the luxury of having this debate. But we spend a lion's share of our conversations sometimes talking about this instead of talking about the roads or getting that new public services building. Okay, and Madam Mayor, you can sit there and act like, well, I'm being unreasonable, but I'm not being unreasonable. I'm just being practical. Okay, and I recognize that we have to pass this budget. I recognize that. Okay, I'm going to stand down and I will vote for this tonight. But I'm here to tell you, I will fight with everything that I've got if we spend one nickel on that beach other than to fix what's already up there. I want to try, I say this clearly. The needs, the absolute needs, our capital needs of our city come first, not the nice to-dos. We had a nice to-do with the casino building and the project cost overruns and everything, then all the debacle that's up there now we have to fix. I'll go along with that. But saying we're going to fix it with $10 million and somehow that's going to make everything better, that's good money after bad, and I'm not going there. So I will change my vote so we can meet our statutory requirements to have a balanced budget.
Point of information.
Mr. Hardy?
It's been stated by Commissioner Maxwell that we have to pass this budget tonight. As a point of information, I would ask the attorney who's done some research into this matter, what happens if we do not finalize this budget this evening?
Madam Attorney?
Thank you. Under the statute, you have adopted at the first hearing the tentative budget. If you begin the fiscal year, October 1st, without a final budget being adopted, you then act under your tentative budget until a final budget is adopted.
So no cataclysm will occur this evening if we do not finalize the budget this evening.
What?
Under the state statute.
Under the state statute. I don't know ramifications otherwise with the state, and perhaps the finance director can talk to that. If we don't adopt the final budget by October 1st, but under the statute, you're allowed to operate under the tentative budget after the beginning of the fiscal year.
And point of information, should this board tie this evening, what happens is that the matter continues to the next regular meeting.
That's correct. Under your rules of procedure, if there's a tie vote, it goes to the next regular meeting.
Which would be October 1st.
Correct.
Okay. As a matter of information, there's no real urgency to approve this particular budget if you don't like it, if you feel that it implies things about policy going forward that you don't agree with, which is one of the reasons why I feel comfortable voting no. This isn't a government shutdown situation here. It's not like the doors of City Hall will be closed on Monday, October 1st if we don't finalize this budget this evening. We operate under the tentative budget, and we can continue to have discussions about that after really at the next regular meeting. So I'm still a no.
And moving forward, Vice Mayor Pro Tem Maxwell, I thank you for your thoughts. I agree with a lot of your thoughts. I thank you for changing your vote tonight. I don't know how prolonging it to October 1st would change anybody's thought pattern, because we've heard from quite a few people. So moving on, Madam Mayor, you're good? Maxwell, Commissioner Maxwell, did you have anything before we take a vote?
No, I was just going to basically say what you said, Mr. Vice Mayor. Nothing's going to change by extending this out. Just be more drama for the next meeting. And frankly, I'm not really into more drama. Let's just get on with it and do what we have to do to do what's right for the people.
And moving forward, I know staff, they're holding off on issues because it's in the budget. They're looking to move forward with moving the year forward. So I want to thank staff. No, we're done. We could go on and on all night, but we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Motion carries 3-1. Thank you.
We have a third public hearing on debt service rate. This is a public hearing, and the general public may speak and ask questions regarding the proposed debt service rate for 2019-2020. I shall open the public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to speak? Then I shall close that public hearing. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Moved by the Vice Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by the Vice Mayor. Are there any public comment cards?
No, Madam Mayor.
Seeing there are none, all those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right. Thank you, everyone, for that. Now I go back to my regular.
The consent agenda.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda. Second?
Second.
All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And at this moment, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Can we take a brief 5 minutes?
5-minute break, and then we're coming back with our Electric Utility Commission meeting.
Christy.
Do you want to wait for Scotty?
If everyone would please come back to the dais. And she spoke with the bell. What is it, we have a bellhop here now?
It's a bellhop.
If we were in December, we'd be able to call that ringing festive.
There you go. Come on, let's go. All right.
Angel got it.
Huh? I did record, and we're on.
I'd like to call this Tuesday, September 24th, Electric Utility City Commission meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Mayor Pantrio.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Andy Amoroso.
Here.
Commissioner Scott Maxwell. Absent for the roll. Commissioner Amari Hardy.
Here.
And Commissioner Herman Robinson is out tonight.
Okay, are there any additions, deletions, or reordering?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay, seeing there are none, we'll go on to public participation of non-agenda items relating to the electric utility.
None, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Approval of the minutes, and I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And we have the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any public comment card?
No, Madam Mayor.
Seeing there are none, all those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. There is no business, no new business, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ed.
I almost.